Welcome to Dr. Lottie Science with Soul. I'm Dr. Lottie and the host of this podcast. I'm a physician, medical intuitive, evidential psychic medium, international keynote speaker, and author of Med School After Menopause, The Journey of My Soul, an inspirational story about transformation, healing, and spirituality, which won first place in the category of spiritual leadership in August 2021 from Living Now Book Awards. This award recognizes truly world-changing books that contribute to positive global change. The inspiration for this podcast came from my own life experiences. As I have journeyed through life, it has taught me that we're part of a greater divine web of interconnectedness. I have walked the path of illness, healing, and transformation. After 2 near-death experiences, I became clairvoyant, clairaudient, and clairsentient, and was guided to attend medical school at the age of 54. We will be meeting with many different types of doctors, healers, as well as spiritual leaders, educators, and other inspiring souls in this podcast. It is my hope that you will gain information and create a path to healing your own life physically, emotionally, and spiritually, and bridge the gap between science and soul. If you are a person who understands the interconnectedness of mind, body, and soul, and would like to take one of my courses or work with me to create a path of healing your own life, please visit divinespiritualessence.com or drlottie.com. To stay up to date on future episodes and to help us reach a larger audience, remember to subscribe, review, and share this podcast, as well as subscribing to my newsletter at divinespiritualessence.com. Welcome to Dr. Lottie's Science with Soul. I'm Dr. Lottie, and today I am excited to introduce Marla Hughes. Marla Hughes has worked with children her entire life in a number of different capacities. At the transplant unit of UCSF Hospital in San Francisco, she taught children about exercise, nutrition, and relaxation. She worked with Dr. Gerald Jampolsky at the Center for Attitudinal Healing, using art and music therapy to help young children who had life-threatening diseases or who had a parent or loved one who was severely ill. Her podcast, Interviews with Innocence, features experts in the fields of science and metaphysics who focus on children and spirituality. Marla is also the founder of the Ethiopian Family Fund, a nonprofit dedicated to developing sustainable education and healthcare for Ethiopian children and their families. She just finished her first children's book, Love Magic, a beautiful story about eternal love. According to Marla, my greatest teachers have been my children. I have never experienced a love that deep or profound. So welcome, Marla. I'm so excited to have you as a guest today.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Lottie. I am so excited to be here.
So tell me, how did your journey working with children begin?
Well, my journey, I always have loved children and dogs. That's kind of animals. And after I graduated from grad school, I just started falling into some programs where I had the opportunity to work with young children, and especially with the 2 jobs that you just talked about in my bio. At UCSF, I was also working with adults, but my real passion was working with these little children who are, had kidney transplants or getting ready to do that. And then the Center for Attitudinal Healing, I just got involved on really a volunteer basis because I was just so excited. And I did a little film there, but my story, the reason I'm so excited to come on the show today is because I want to talk a little bit about my journey, my spiritual journey, and why I wrote the book, my first book, Love Magic, and I hope to start writing another one here soon. So my journey, I always kind of considered myself a yogi, but a little over 4 years ago, my 19-year-old son passed, and my family's hearts were just broken open. We just really had this perfect thing going. And uh, they were only 12 months apart. I have twins who are 22 now. Dean would be 23. And it was like a little preschool. And I just loved, I had children when I was a bit older, and I found my glory when I became a mom, because much more childlike than I am adultish at times. And we just traveled the world and just were having this really beautiful. Sometimes I would say to myself, this just seems so perfect in a way, And then this tragedy happened, and I just went down this spiritual, sort of, I don't want to call it a rabbit hole, but this journey. And it started with one of my girlfriends coming to me and saying, I remember I was walking my Labradoodle, and I was saying something about having a dream about Dean. And I did not know anything. I had never heard of a medium. I had never been to a psychic. I had never thought about plant medicine or near death experiences, none of I was just, this girl doing yoga, being a mom, and just loving every minute of it. And so I was telling her, and she said, well, I have something to tell you. And she is a medium and a channeler, but I never really explored that with her, because it was kind of like, I don't know exactly what she does, but she does stuff. And she said, Dean came to me not long after he passed, and he woke me up at 3 a.m. It seems like it's always 3 a.m. And I went into my little guest room, and I just sat and wrote down everything that came through. And she said, I was going to wait until I saw you, but you want me to read it to you now? And I said, reluctantly but excitedly, yes. I just will never forget. I just sat down on the ledge on the sidewalk, and I just started crying. And what came through the letter was just how much he loved us and what a wonderful life he had had. But not most importantly, it was all very important, but that for me to be a mother to the universe. And one reason he left so early, because he said his learning on this earth was complete, was to help connect the two worlds through laughter, through mantras, through song, through play, and all the things that I've always loved. And it was just so beautiful. And you know what? I wanted it to be true so badly, but I didn't know what to think. I knew this friend of mine would not lie to me, but it was just so incredibly beautiful. And being a mother to the universe, that's what I've learned. It's been downloaded to me. And what I don't mean for that to sound some grandiose or anything, but I'll talk about in a little bit later. But I truly believe that if children, we talk so much, you and your interviews and my interviews, we end up having a lot of near-death experiencers on our shows, and you're one yourself, because it brings so much comfort to people. And that's what really brought a lot of comfort to me. I mean, I went to plant medicine retreats. I did mediumship. I did, physical mediumship. You name it, pretty much. I've done it. I've gone to Europe and studied and all of it. But the near-death experiences really, really touched me, and especially the children who came back and not only talked about where they had been, but also drew pictures of where they had been. And this is like 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. And I'm getting off track a little bit, but that's okay. This is about my book. I just knew in my heart that if we were able to, I wrote a what if list, like what if children from the day they were born, they were taught that, let's say their puppy passes, that they could connect with them. And of course, you have to get the parents on board, and you could interweave it into different religions, but to sit down and actually do some rituals, look up at the sky and remember the memories, and maybe have a little altar, or some people don't like that word, but whatever, a shelf, and take the time to be present with these children and let them know, teach them a little bit about frequency, and that they're still here, and we can talk to them and laugh with them, and bring that into a family setting, and so that children will live not in fear of when a loved one passes. Of course, you'll definitely still have grief, no matter what we know or what we've experienced. We're still human, but I just think I know it would change the world, and that's why I wrote this book. But as I started exploring all of these things, one day I said to my daughter, I said, and our kids were raised, I'm Christian, and I call myself spiritual now, but I still have a lot of Christian in me, and my husband's Jewish, and we raised the kids in a pretty somewhat, a Jewish home, really. And I had a Christmas tree. Both homes, let's put it that way, are both religions. And I said, do you think that this would have been easier for you at all if you'd learned this since you were a little girl? And she goes, yeah, I really think it would. And I just knew there was such a need for that. So that's when I started doing my podcast. I wanted to write a book right away, and I wanted to write it with children's stories, where children not only talked about NDEs, but children who had not had NDEs. They talk about choosing parents and past lives, and people they met in heaven before they came here. I mean, the things that come out of it's just astonishing. And one book I recommend if people want to hear some of those beautiful stories is by Wayne Dyer, and it's called Memories of Heaven. And I wanted to continue his work and write something like that, but I didn't have anybody to ask. My kids were a little older, and I don't really have a tribe here. My friends are really not into this sort of stuff. A few of them are. So I thought, I'll just start a podcast. So I started interviewing, a lot of people, and it seems like it always goes back to the children. So my podcast has a bent sort of on, it's not just on children, but it's bringing out our childlike nature, that we should have more wonder and more awe in the world and be present. I even went to a plant medicine workshop, which was that's a whole nother interview. But they suggested that we take a picture, everyone take a picture when they're like 2 or 3 years old, and put it on your screenshot of your phone, and just check in every once in a while, remember, and remember who that child is. So yeah, that's how I kind of began all of this.
What a journey. And how did you get involved with the spiritual aspect? I know that you have received different signs from Dean. Were there other signs as well?
Oh my gosh, I'll just share with you a couple of the signs that were so profound. When the kids, it's kind of a complicated story, but anyway, the kids were all 3 children in a theater. We called it a theater troupe. It was really like just a fun kind of bilingual thing. And when they got to be 12, we could go international. And as you heard in my bio, I work in Ethiopia. So we took the kids to Ethiopia. Now, this is a group of about 12 kids from America. And then they go live with host families. This was in a little village called Alito Wando. And they pick a folklore, and they put together a musical and a play. And there's 2 kings and 2 queens and 2 whatever they have. One's American, one is Ethiopian, and the different languages. So it's really special. So When we went to Ethiopia, Dean loved the monkeys. And we went to, actually, the twins weren't old enough to be in the play. So we stayed in a supposedly Holly Selassie's summer place. It was nothing like it sounds, trust me. But he loved the monkeys, and we just had tons of pictures of him feeding the monkeys. And in the play, they dressed him up. It was called Fire on the Mountain. And anyway, they dressed him up like Bob Marley, and he sang "Everything's Going to Be All Right," the Three Little Birds song. And so this was when he was 11. So after everything happened, my girlfriend called me just out of the blue, same girlfriend that brought through the letter. And she didn't know that we had gone to Ethiopia. I mean, even though we were friends, we were raising children, and we really kind of lost touch. And she said, it's so weird, last night Dean came to me and he was like flying from tree to tree, kind of like monkeys would do in a tree. And he was singing something like, it's all right. It's going to be all, it's all right. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it was just unbelievable. And really, Bob Marley, that's been a sign throughout. And those songs, the family and I just seem to hear them all the time. And this is one of the signs that I got that really, wow. So I was talking with a medium, had never met her before. And she brought Dean in right away and said some really evidential things. And then she said, he's talking about genes. And I'm like, gene, G-E, I don't know what gene. She goes, no. She goes, like Gene, genes. And he's saying, thank you so much for bringing me into this world to fulfill my destiny. And no one knew it. But when I was pregnant with Dean, I had an amnio that was abnormal. And we had to go to genetic counseling. And we decided, of course, we decided to, obviously, decided to have the baby. And we had not told anyone. I mean, we didn't even tell my in-laws or my parents. So that was just a huge sign too. But I get signs all the time. And interestingly, my twin daughter does too. She dreams about, she'll come up and say, I had a visitation from Dean last night, and just tell me all about it. So it happens daily, that I get these signs and synchronicities, and I just cherish it.
Wow, that is just so beautiful. And the fact that you recognize that they are signs and listen to them and receive these signs. All the people out there that have lost a loved one, they really are trying to communicate and give us signs. Yeah. So it's such great words of wisdom for all the listeners to tune into that.
Right. And I do really strongly suggest, of all the things I've done, just the stories from the near-death experiences are just so, whether it's my podcast, your podcast, wherever they go on to listen to things like that, they are just so comforting. And if you read some of like PMH Atwater's work, and once again, some of the children, because they're just so innocent, these children, no one's making this, and that now there's tens of millions of them, these near and across all cultures and I feel like there's this like global transformation taking place in the world where people are really waking up to this. And what a gift we are giving our children by waking up to the reality that there is continuity of consciousness, and that we do go on. And I also feel very strongly, I will say, I have a knowing that when a child is raised with this knowledge, that's not only just the knowledge, but it's action, it's practical for us to be with them and do the things I mentioned earlier, that really an inner strength develops. And we know our children need some inner strength. We all do, right? All the craziness in the world, that they know that there's something bigger, or they know that there's something that they can go to and ask for help, and the importance of being quiet and being present. And I just think that that's one of the most important things that we can do for a child.
Yeah, I love your words of wisdom. Do you have any words of wisdom from Dean that you would like to share?
Wow. He said to me, I now know the secret. I'm getting shivers. I now know the secret. No matter what form your body takes, life just keeps on blossoming.
That's just beautiful.
Yeah, I could have all my letters right here in front of me. He has shared so many just beautiful things. I should have brought some more, but anyway, I'll think of them as we go along.
Yeah. I know that. So you met these people that helped bring in messages about Dean.
Yes.
Can you tell us a bit about that journey after meeting these people?
Yeah, and the reason for the listeners, the reason she's saying these Dr. Lottie is saying is they would rather me not using names, because they're very well known in the scientific community, and not that it's a big deal, but just intermeshing those two worlds, which is so incredibly important, and they're actually like doing that a lot now. So soon after this happened, an old friend of mine said, I know this couple that live not far from you, and they help people connect with loved ones from the other side. And I don't know if it's too soon for you. It'd probably been a couple weeks, but if you're interested, and of course I was interested, and I didn't know who they were. I didn't know anything about them. And my girlfriend went with me. I didn't even tell my husband I was going. I didn't tell anybody I was going except my girlfriend. And I go down, and it ends up that this guy, he's a very renowned scientist, worked with Jonas Salk and Ed Lewis and Francis Crick, co-founders of DNA. I think that's the right word, co-founder. And so he was very typically oriented. And I think many of us, as we start down this journey, that's really good for us, because that's what, we've kind of we've been raised in this Western culture of materialistic views. And he and his wife, who's just a darling spiritual person, I think it was a granddaughter, or they had lost someone, and they had gone to see somebody, and they were so intrigued by what happened and what had come through, and they decided that they were going to start trying to connect. And they tried and they tried and they tried, and they almost gave up. And then all of a sudden, messages started coming through. And so out of the kindness of their hearts, they help those friends of friends for no charge at all, just to help comfort people. So they become very good friends of mine. When I talk about these letters that I have, I've probably had 10 plus sessions with them, and I always sit down and transcribe them, and always have them. And I go back and read them all the time, because you just need that, you just need every day. A friend of mine asked me a couple of days ago, how do you do it? How do you keep moving forward and seemingly, happy, and doing all this work that you're doing? And it sounds like I'm really busy. I'm not really busy, but I guess it looks that way to some people. But I really thought about it. And for your listeners who have lost a loved one or are grieving, as you educate, listen to these stories. And every day I think of a few of my favorite, stories I've heard from really, in my mind, really reputable people, and what they've said. And I remember those letters from Dean, and I remember, or I look at my automatic writing that I haven't really done as much of as I would like, and see what's come through, and just all the evidential things and all the signs that I've gotten, and just remind myself that don't let other people muddy the waters. Don't let other people muddy the waters. And the experiences that you do have and the things that you learn, be really careful who to share it with, because it's your personal journey. And a lot of people just aren't ready for this. In other words of wisdom to Dean, he said, I'm so proud of you for how you're going down this spiritual path, but always remember that everyone is doing exactly the right thing. And just because someone is not following the path that you are, let it be a stepping stone to remind you how far you've come in your spiritual journey. And yeah, that was some nice words of wisdom, because you want everybody to like really get into it and this and that. So, and people do like to muddy the waters, and then you come back a little bit down, because you start questioning yourself, but just keep moving forward.
I love it. That's just great advice, because we tend to want people to do what we're doing, because it also gives us confirmation that we're doing the right thing. And working as a physician, I see people, coming in saying, well, my sister-in-law told me, I need to be on this diet because the diet works for her. And I said, well, that's great that it works for her, but you're on your path.
Right.
And that's the same thing with any path that we're on. We have to remember that we are all on our own unique path in this life. Yeah. And we don't need other people to give us confirmation that we are on our own right path. So such good words of wisdom. So let's switch gears a little bit. I want you to tell the audience a little bit about your podcast, Interviews of Innocence.
Okay. Before I just, these words of wisdom are now coming in that he's shared with me. And one was, I know how hurtful it was for you with my passing. And while you view it as a tragedy, it was not a tragedy. We had all planned this before we were ever born. One of us had to leave early in order to do the work that we were destined to do, and I volunteered to go, which was very difficult to hear. But he has said many, many times, and you hear this all the time, once again, with near-death experiences, and that it really is, I believe, that we know when we're going to come into this earthly realm, and it's planned on when we're going to leave. Very hard for us to wrap our heads around, but I think we're all learning that the brain serves as a filter, and consciousness is so much more. And there's such a larger, divine, expansive universe out there. And we have to remember and trust, and just trust in the universe and the divine plan, as hard as it is. But as Raymond Moody says about prayer, well, actually, I think somebody shared this with him, that praying, or whatever you want to call it, that surrender is the greatest prayer of all. I say that to myself every single day.
Yeah.
Surrender to the universe. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Oh, my podcast.
No, we got to sidetrack, but that is such a good message, because that is exactly, I believe, I have the same belief. It is all about trusting and surrendering to that, because we think we are more in control than I think we really are. And I believe, just like you, that I really do think that our entrance and exit dates are predetermined. And there are certain things that, our life path is, we're here to have certain experiences.
Yeah.
So,
and also, Dean said, one of the last times I was with these friends of mine, they're friends now, he talked about the pandemic. And he said that part of his work there is helping people that souls are just pouring in now because of what is going on. And he said that it's so much, that it's, he doesn't look at his work, he's so joyful, but he confirmed once again that before all of these people, and I know this is so difficult to hear, but all of these people had planned they're leaving this earth. Maybe not the cause, but definitely the time. Yeah, with maybe a few different exit points. But anyway, you want to talk about my podcast?
Yes. Yeah. Let's switch to the podcast. Yeah. Tell us about it.
I tell you, this podcast, I didn't even know what a podcast was.
When you started.
Yeah, this is another thing that just kind of comes to you, and so listen to that voice within. And someone said once, this is so true for me, is that sometimes when you have a project or something, and it's not that you, even though I did want to do it, but not that you want to do it as much as you have to do it. And that's the way my podcast was. So I actually have a really fun story about Raymond Moody. So when I was thinking about my book and this and that, Raymond Moody wrote Life After Life. I'm sure your listeners are very familiar with. He coined the term near-death experience. One of the most brilliant people I've ever met. I had never heard of him before. I didn't know who Raymond Moody was, and I saw him on a talk show or something. And he was like my hero. And so I went on this website, and he had this woman that he was working, who was his partner, Lisa Smart. And Lisa Smart did book coaching. So and this has a lot to do with my podcast. And so I just reached out to Lisa. And this was such synchronicity, because before we started the show, we were talking about how sometimes you reach out to people and you don't hear back from them. And everybody is so busy, and with the world going on right now. And Lisa, I don't know why, but she just opened her arms up to me and was just like, and we're just chatting on the phone. Before I know it, I'm on an airplane flying to Athens, Georgia, to do my first interview, because I don't know about you, but my first ones, I would have flown anywhere to do an interview, because I thought that was just the way to do it. And I ended up staying with Lisa. Raymond came in. I spent 3 days with him. We became such good friends. And I even got to he was going to do a psychomantium video on his website. It's the old time, back in the Greek days, they would build these caves, and it was called mirror gazing, to help connect with loved ones. And I guess these caves were all over the place. So he had done a lot of research with that. And so I got to be his participant in the psychomantium, which I actually saw. The first thing I saw was my dog. And later, after he interviewed me before and he interviewed me after, and I did see Dean. I mean, I really did. And it was just, wow. So I met Raymond. We became good friends. Lisa and I became very good friends. She's been so helpful to me. So they really helped me, reach out to a lot of these people that I've been honored to interview, that are pretty big in this field. I mean, sometimes I'm shocked that they say yes. It's like even Raymond, he's been on like 4 times. And it just shows you, as I'm sure that you've seen, is that people who've had NDEs or spiritual transform, I mean, it is all about love, and everybody wants to share, and it's just oozing with love. And that's what I just can't get enough of it. And we're just all people trying to, live in this earthly existence and be the best that we can be. So yeah, so my podcast, actually, it's kind of like yours, because it is all across the board. So if you're talking about children or the child within, well, that's pretty much everybody. So it's, I did a little series on autism, because those children are at such a high frequency. I've done series on plant medicine, on children in NDEs, on I haven't done anything on the psychomantium, a lot of mediumship. So all kinds of different guests. I feel like they all bring something really incredible to the program, of course, or, they wouldn't be on the program. And it's brought me so much comfort, not only for myself, but when I had a friend call the other day who's going through a really hard time. And as you mentioned earlier, somebody said to you, she said, this has changed, this has changed my life. And whenever I'm down, I turn on your podcast. And I thought, you know what, that's all I care about,
Yeah.
just planting a seed. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's just wonderful. And now let's talk about your book, Love
Yeah.
Magic.
So
How did that happen, and what is the message that you're trying to convey with that book?
yes. Well, Love Magic is about a little girl who's my daughter, and Carly, when she was little. And Carly had this crazy blonde hair. So if you go on my website, interviewswithinnocence.com, which I'm sure will be in the show notes, you'll see some pictures of the book and her puppy Cosmo. And Cosmo is one of our dogs. And I just sat down and wrote it one day, and it's about a little girl and her puppy, and she really misses her pop pop, badly. He went to heaven for, there are many, many different names for heaven, but that's what I grew up with. So I like that name. And she's with her grandma planting lavender, and she's just dreamily looking up in the sky, and she's really missing her pop pop. So it's about her journey. It's about her journey, remembering that one of their favorite games was bubbles, and they would, blow bubbles at each other. So there's this bubble thing. But she always remembered, as she told her grandma, that Pop Pop told her the most important things in life are not seen with the eyes, but are felt with the heart. And grandma says, and do you believe that? And Charlie's like, well, I think so, but what does it mean, grandma? So it's her journey of learning what it means: signs, synchronicities, um, memories, laughing, so on and so forth, with her beautiful grandma. And then I'll save the end as a surprise. So anyway, it's a great book for, I believe, for, it's not a specific age. It's secretly a book for adults as much as it is for children, to remind us to be present and to remind us that we can connect with our loved ones no matter where they are. As Dean says, life just keeps on blossoming, and we can connect with them. All we need to do is think of them, and they're right here.
Wow. And then how can people find it? Is it available online and online book sites?
Yes, it's available on Amazon. Just put in
Mhm.
Love Magic by Marla Hughes, Hughes. And yeah, so that's how you can find it.
And how do you think that your work will help humanity and our children? How do you think this
I
book will help humanity and children?
I believe that if children are validated when they see their imaginary friends, or they see grandma after she's passed, or all of those beautiful things that children see, if they're validated, if it opens up the conversation, if it brings an adult or caregiver to just ask questions, be curious, and guide the children, and let them know once again that they're supported, and to share stories with them about what they've learned about what happens after someone passes. Once again, it's important that an adult believes in this too, and that's why it's partly an adult book. But I truly do have a knowing that if we start with our children at an early age, I mean, here we are, however old we are, and we're just kind of learning in the last decade. Well, I don't know how long you've been on your path, but that we're just learning this. And if we can start learning it as a very young child, and learning every day, not reviewing, but talking about the golden rule, which is not something we made up. It's part of the fabric of the universe, as Bruce Grayson says, fabric of the universe. And we talk about who did you show a little love today? And just, it's part of your daily loving, kind routine and being of service to others. I know it would change the world, because we would grow up knowing that love is the most important thing of all.
Yes, such great words of wisdom. And we're coming to a close of this interview. But before we wrap up, what would you like to shout to the world?
I would like to shout to the world to every day just take a few moments, if not longer, close your eyes. Think of all that you're grateful for. Remember the golden rule. And ask yourself, how can I walk in this world just today or just this morning and be love and light, even though that may sound a little cliche, but just those little things, or not learning, doing those little things. How can I walk through this life? And not only will it change your life, but the ripple effect will be like none other. So that's what I would like to shout to the world.
Beautiful. And I want to thank you so much, Marla, for being a guest today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor. It's so great to see you again.
And I will put in the podcast notes as well your podcast Interviews of Innocence, which is available on all interviews with Innocence. And I'll put that in the podcast notes so people can go and find your podcast as well. And Marla has interviewed many great spiritual people and leaders of all walks of life. So go check out her podcast as well. So again, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed it.
I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode of Dr. Lottie Science with Soul. To stay up to date on future episodes and to help us reach a larger audience, remember to subscribe, review, and share this podcast, as well as subscribing to my newsletter at divinespiritualessence.com. If you are a person who understands the interconnectedness of mind, body, and soul, and would like to take one of my courses or work with me to create a path of healing your own life, please visit divinespiritualessence.com or drlottie.com. My book, Med School After Menopause, The Journey of My Soul, an inspirational story about transformation, healing, and spirituality, which won first place in the category of spiritual leadership in August 2021 from Living Now Book Awards, is available online at Amazon as well as other online platforms worldwide. If you are a person who understands the interconnectedness of mind, body, and soul, and would like to take one of my courses or work with me to create a path of healing your own life, please visit divinespiritualessence.com or drlottie.com.